Good afternoon, my friends. Can you hear me? Yes. Good afternoon, my friends. Can you hear me? Yes. How's your day? Good. Okay, as a real estate investor myself, I must say that I'm someone who enjoys working with agents like you guys. I have benefited a lot from many real estate agents who helped me to make a lot of money by selling, buying, and renting out my property. So no matter how technology changes, I will continue to use the service of our good agents over here. Give yourself a round of applause. Okay, so I'm going to share with you some of the insights that PropertyGuru has done. Because we know that property investing is a very sentiments-driven activity. So therefore, we believe that measuring of the consumer sentiments is very important for us to gauge the market. So I'm going to share with you two index. One is the PropertyGuru Affordability Sentiments Index for H2 2017. So this index is actually a survey done on PropertyGuru users in collaboration with a research house. The second index I'm going to share with you is the PropertyGuru Price Index for Q1 2018. This is actually based on the listing data that PropertyGuru has captured for that quarter. Why we think that both of them will be a very strong representation of the sentiments of Singapore is because PropertyGuru capture more than 90% market share in Singapore. So therefore, we think that our listing data and our consumer survey data will be a very good gauge of the consumer sentiments. First, let's talk about the Property Affordability Sentiment Index for H2 2017. Okay, first of all, the top line is that there is a slight improvement in the Property Affordability Sentiment Index. H1, that's in 2017, there's a score of 29, and H2 2017, there's a score of 34. So by and large, there's an improvement in sentiments of the market in H2 2017 compared to H1 2017. So what are some of the variables based on this satisfaction score? One is value for money rating, one is real estate climate, interest rate situation, perceived government effort, and property prices in the next 1 to 5 years. So in other words, in H2 2017, there's a feel-good factor among the consumers. And this is reflected in the satisfaction with the real estate climate from 34 score to a score of 37. The question asked is how satisfied or dissatisfied are you with the current local real estate climate? So there's an improvement. I think we can see this because last year, 2017, was the turning point of the property cycle for Singapore. So by and large, the consumer have a feel-good factor. Therefore, more and more of them are entering the market. So what are the top 5 reasons to account for the satisfaction of the real estate climate? The first one is there's a long-term prospect for capital appreciation. So we can see that by and large in H2 2017, many of the consumers, I would say at least 45% of them, they believe that the long-term capital appreciation of the property prices in Singapore will continue. And I think that is a very real scenario. And of course, they are quite satisfied with the low mortgage interest rate. And they believe that the Singapore real estate market is stable and resilient because our market is controlled by the TDSR. There's no overborrowing and over leverage. And as long as prices of property keep going up, I'm happy. So I think this reflects the thinking behind the property owners of Singapore. And also last year, we see that the Singapore economy is also at a tipping point where we have some good growth. So when our economy is growing, the people's sentiments are also feeling better. So in short, the sentiments in H2 was influenced by these 5 main factors. How about people who are dissatisfied? So people who are dissatisfied give the reason that property prices are expensive, overpriced. Government policies are restrictive, unfavorable. So I think this one is referring to the TDSR, the LTV, and also the ABSD. Properties are too small. So I have personally come across many buyers. Initially, they stay in HDB, they want to upgrade to a condo. But when they go and see the show flat of the new launches, they find that the rooms are too small and they ended up didn't buy and they rather stay put in their HDB. So I think the size of the property and the size of the room does matter to some consumers, especially for the growing family. Economy not performing well and foreigners are driving up prices. So these are some of the reasons cited by respondents of dissatisfaction. More respondents feel that property prices will increase higher than in previous wave. So this is highly expected because we know that H2 2017 is when the prices start to turn north upwards. And more than half of the respondents feel property prices for condominium, executive condo, and landed property are expected to increase over the next 5 years. So which is why in H2 2017, going on to H1 2018, we see more and more people entering the market and more sellers asking for higher prices because there's an expectation that prices will continue to increase. Okay, so let's have a flavor of what's the profile of the people that we surveyed. So first of all, residential property ownership. 3 out of 4 of the people we have surveyed own at least one residential property in Singapore, and 1 out of 4 have not owned a property in Singapore yet. And out of those 3 out of 4 who own a residential property in Singapore, 70% of them own only one property, whereas 30% of them own more than one property. And what are the top area or that these people currently own their property? So District 19 is top, and I think it's quite intuitive because we know that District 19, the Punggol, Sengkang, Hougang area is where government has built a lot of new HDB flat, and this is a very new age location. So there are many young families there. So we have a lot of respondents who stay there, and then followed by East Coast, District 15, District 18, Pasir Ris, so on and so forth. So this profile our database of buyers. Half of the respondents are looking to purchase a property in the next 6 months. So this reflects the thinking when we survey them in H2 2017. So half of them want to purchase. And the type of property they want to purchase is 44% of them, they can purchase both new or resale. 16% of them only one new, and 40% only one resale. So we think that there's a higher proportion who go for resale as opposed to new because we know that the developer have started to increase the prices and buying the land high. So some of them may want to seek out some lower price property in the resale market. Purchase intention for condo and landed property increase, while purchase intention of HDB decline. So the blue line represents the purchase intention for HDB, and the red and yellow line represent the private condo and landed property. So when we reach H2 2017, we know that the Singapore government make it very clear that HDB is not a property that you are supposed to make money or speculate. It's meant for own stay. And people also believe that the private residential market is going up. So therefore, the purchase intention for private condo and landed is higher, and the purchase intention for HDB dropped in H2 2017. East Coast Marine Parade is the most preferred district for purchasing property, followed by Newton, Novena, Hougang, Punggol, and Sengkang. So these are the locations that we asked them where they want to buy their next property. So it's quite interesting to note that East Coast Marine Parade District 15 emerged top, but this district has always consistently emerged top in our survey. I think there are three reasons. The first reason is that this is mainly an aspirational district for many Singaporeans. Many Singaporeans aspire to live there. And secondly, we also know that East Coast has many good schools. And thirdly, we also know that East Coast is a very livable place where there's a sea, there's East Coast Park. And last but not least, this is also an area that is near the airport. So for people who need to travel out of the country frequently, it becomes a very livable area. Then the second popular district, District 11, Newton Novena, because we know that in 2017, the prime district property have started to bounce back. So they would think that compared to Orchard Road, District 9, District 11 probably allow them to capitalize on the bounce back, on the rebound of the prime area, but yet they don't have to pay that kind of high quantum like Orchard Road. So I would say the first one is probably more of the upgrader who wants to upgrade to an aspirational address. The second is more for the investor. And the third, as usual, Punggol and Sengkang is always popular for the first-time owner-occupier because it offers a very low entry level for them. And this is a place where there's a lot of greenery and there's a lot of young people and also neighborhood schools there. So these three are emerged as the top three popular destinations for home buyers wanting to buy their next property. 7 in 10 respondents have a budget of 750,000. So this represents their budget. So we can see that we all know that we can forget about those that is below 500,000 because it's not possible to find such property in Singapore. They probably have to buy Malaysia. But within Singapore, we know that the biggest sweet spot is probably 1 to 1.5 million. And of course, the 750,000 to 1 million. So we know that these two are the biggest sweet spot for property buyers in Singapore. Of course, once you cross 1.5 million, then there will be a smaller group who can afford it. High property prices is the main deterrent of not purchasing property in the future. So remember just now we asked the respondent half expressed interest to buy a property in the next 6 months. The other half express a desire not to buy a property in the next 6 months. So those who don't want to buy a property in the next 6 months, the main deterrent for them is the high property prices in Singapore. And of course, there are some who say that one property is enough, and there are some who say they are not ready. And of course, there are some who are restricted because they don't have enough funds for down payment. So I think this group are probably people who already have one property. If they want to buy a second property, they will be caught under the TDSR, where they have to fork out 50% of the down payment. So all these are some of the deterrents of people from buying their property. Okay, now we go somewhere beyond Singapore. We asked the same respondents, do they also own properties out of Singapore? So over here, for our survey respondents, we have about 20% who currently own property out of Singapore. And this represents the type of property they own. But to have a sense of where their overseas property is located, the top destination is Malaysia, followed by India, UK, and Australia. So we think that for some of them who put Malaysia and almost all of them who put India, I think these people are probably Indian national or Malaysian who have come to Singapore to work as PR. They probably have their own home back in their own country. It's not a case of Singaporean investing in overseas property in India. But we believe the Malaysian component will consist of both Malaysian PR who own their own homes as well as Singaporean who currently have already invested in Malaysia. Then of course for UK and Australia, it's obvious that these are people who already have parked some assets in these two markets. And I think for UK and Australia, most of those who invested in this country, they are people who have studied in those countries before, or they have plans to send their children to study there before, and followed by US. So this represents the overseas property ownership of our survey respondent. So reason for owning overseas property. So the key reason that our respondent give us why they want to buy overseas property is because the prices overseas are more affordable. So I think the single biggest factor for Singaporeans to invest overseas is really affordability, because increasingly many Singaporeans are finding that beyond their first house, it's increasingly harder and harder for them to buy their second or third property in Singapore. Henceforth, there's a push factor for them to invest overseas. And of course, for those who say they have family in their home country, these are the Malaysian or Indian national who are probably working here as PR. So that one, we won't have much to pitch to them. Then the third is good capital appreciation. So I think when you pitch to your investor for overseas property investment, other than the affordability, the other key selling point you have to work out is what is the annual capital appreciation, which they will consider. And there's a 22% who are considering for retirement. So we do know there are many Singaporeans who invest in Malaysia, for example, to retire there. And rental yield comes up as a fifth factor. So these are some of the main reasons why Singaporeans invest in overseas property. In H2 2017, the intention to buy overseas property declined across all the property types. Whether you talk about buying overseas houses or overseas condo or overseas commercial property, the purchase intention for overseas property declined, which is also intuitive. When the local market comes up, naturally the Singapore buyers will turn their attention to local Singapore property, and therefore the intention to purchase overseas property decline. But I suppose now with the new cooling measure, the swing may be the other way around also. Purchase intention of overseas, so this is the same thing. Okay, next, what is their purchase intention for overseas property in terms of country? So we noticed in a course since we started the survey in 2015 until 2017, I think two markets always come out very strong, which is Malaysia and Australia. I think Malaysia always come out strong for the simple reason that its proximity, geography, and also there are many Malaysians who are working in Singapore. Australia come out very strong because there are many Singaporeans who study in Australia, and some of them may even talk about migrating there. But we do notice another interesting trend that is in H2 2017 is Thailand actually emerged as one of the top three. So I think we all know that now the market sentiments for buying Thai property has become more and more popular in Singapore. So my friend over here also has been selling a lot of Bangkok property. So Thailand probably has emerged as an up-and-coming investment destination for Singaporeans. And I'm not surprised that it may even catch up very soon with Malaysia and Australia in the time to come. Yeah, so this one is talking about, same thing for private apartment. When people invest in Australia, they go for private apartment. For landed house, Malaysia, because I think that's where Singaporeans buy the landed property in Johor to use as a weekend home, because landed property in Singapore is so expensive. So reason for purchase of property overseas: affordability, capital appreciation, rental yield. So these are the three main reasons. Okay, next we asked them about supply. So basically half of them felt that there's an oversupply in the Singapore property market. So I think when you talk to your buyers, this is an issue that you may need to address. So this is the perceived government effort, sufficiency of government effort to make housing affordable. So there's an improvement in their satisfaction with government effort to make the property affordable in 2017. And 50% of the respondents agree with the government's stance on maintaining cooling measure. and 35% disagree. And factors about a property that's important. So what are some of the considerations when they choose whether they want to buy project A or project B? So distance from the workplace, near to shopping mall, and also proximity to park, followed by proximity to good schools. So these are the considerations. Top 3 features when choosing a residential property, when they decide which one to buy. The size of the bedroom is very important for them. Orientation of unit. Okay, size of bedroom, I notice nowadays there are some projects whereby you can't even fit a queen size bed. So I think this is very, very important for many young families. Orientation of unit, maybe facing the expressway or facing the west sun. Age of the unit, they probably don't want it to be too old, too run down. So this gives a sense of the demographics of the people who take part in our survey, primarily Singapore citizens, and a lot of them live in private condominiums. So this gives us a sense of the database quality of PropertyGuru, and a large part of them has a monthly household income of above 10,000, and many of them are PMEB, and they are married with kids. So I would say this represents basically a microscope of a typical working parents with children in Singapore who are professional, university graduate, drawing a good pay, and this survey result reflect their thoughts about the property market. And this classify them, some are investor, upgrader, and first-time home buyer. Okay, next I'm going to move on to another one, which is a PropertyGuru Price Index Quarter 1, 2018. So just now that one was a survey. This one is actually a capture based on the listing data we have in PropertyGuru. Okay, so this is talking about seller side. So we basically capture the listing data and we measure them. Sellers continue to raise asking prices due to high demand of properties and ongoing en bloc. So in other words, what we are seeing is that we are seeing the price index of the asking prices in PropertyGuru going up and up. And quarter 1 2018 is represent another up compared to quarter 4 2017. So because sellers are expecting prices to go up, and of course with all the en bloc deal, they continue to ask for higher asking price. So it marks the 4th straight quarter of an increase in asking price in PropertyGuru. And supply has gone down. What we have noticed is that on a quarter-to-quarter basis, basically there are less and less listings in PropertyGuru. So what it means is that many individual homeowners are holding back their selling decision because they anticipate the market to go up. So they are not selling. So when they are not selling, there will be less supply. And when there's less supply, you have more buyers competing for the same unit. And that's where you push up the asking price. And of course, developer side, they had some delay in Q1 for their launches. And individual sellers held back putting up their properties for sale. So some macroeconomic factor. We saw that first quarter of 2018, Singapore economy grew, and estimate for GDP growth is also quite good. Of course, there's also market risks such as rising interest rate and increasing vacancy rate. So while the sentiment is buoyant at that time, there's also a real worry that our vacancy rate is still high, and therefore, and also interest rate is rising. So I think that is also another reason why the government came up with a new cooling measure not too long ago to try to cool down the market a little bit. So what we have now is quarter 1. So we will release the quarter 2 very soon. And even for the survey, we will release the H1 2018 very soon. So when that is done, look forward to share the latest sentiments survey with you guys. And it will be interesting for us to find out what are the aftermath of the implementation of a new cooling measure on the sentiments. Has it continued to improve, maintain, or drop after the cooling measure? Yep, so this is the Guru view. Okay, So that's it from me. Thank you for your attention.